I want a baby so badly, she sobbed into my chest the moment I walked through the door. My name is Gabriel. I'm 32 years old, been a Marine for 10 years, and just finished 6 months in Iraq. In 8 years of marriage, Jennifer had always been crystal clear about kids. Not happening, she'd say whenever the subject came up. I'm not ready for that kind of responsibility. But here she was, clinging to me like her life depended on it, begging for something she'd never wanted before. I held her close and let her cry. The house smelled different. Not bad, just different. New air freshener, maybe. The furniture had been rearranged. Small things, but I noticed them. You learn to notice details when your life depends on it. Of course, sweetheart, I whispered into her hair. But first, let me show you something. She pulled back and looked at me with those green eyes I'd fallen in love with in college. They were puffy from crying, but there was something else there, something I couldn't quite place. Fear, maybe, or guilt. Show me what? She asked. Later, I said. Let me get cleaned up first. 6 months of desert dust doesn't wash off easy. She nodded and stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. That's when I noticed it. The slight curve to her belly that hadn't been there when I left. Just barely visible under her loose sweater. But I'd memorized every inch of my wife's body over 8 years. She was pregnant. Had to be at least 3 months along, judging by the subtle changes. Have you been eating well? I asked, keeping my voice casual. Too well, she laughed, but it sounded forced. Stress eating while you were gone. I missed you so much. I smiled and kissed her forehead. I missed you too. But I hadn't missed her calls. Every conversation we'd had over video chat, she'd seemed distracted, always checking her phone, always cutting our talks short, because she had somewhere to be. When I'd ask about her job at the insurance office, she'd give vague answers. When I'd ask about her coworkers, she'd change the subject. The anonymous email had arrived in my military account 3 weeks before I was scheduled to come home. No sender name, just a short message. Your wife isn't eating alone. Attached was a photo of Jennifer walking into a hotel with a man I didn't recognize. Dark hair, expensive suit, wedding ring on his finger. I'd thought about ignoring it, thought about deleting it and pretending I'd never seen it. But something about Jennifer's recent behavior made me save it instead. Now standing in my own living room, watching my wife lie to my face about stress eating, I was glad I'd made the calls I'd made. Jennifer and I met at University of Kansas when I was 21 and she was 19. She was studying business administration. I was in ROTC. She used to joke that she was attracted to men in uniform, but only if they promised never to make her a military wife who moved around every 2 years. I promised, and I kept that promise. 10 years in the Marines, and we'd never left Kansas City, Missouri. She got her job at Caldwell Insurance straight out of college. Started as a clerk, worked her way up to claims adjuster. Good money, good benefits, and she loved the stability. I loved that she loved it. When I deployed to Afghanistan 3 years ago, she handled everything at home without complaint. When I got orders for Iraq this time, she'd kissed me goodbye and told me she'd be waiting. For the first 3 months, she was. Our video calls were regular. Her emails were long and detailed. She'd tell me about her days, about her coworkers, about the new supervisor who'd transferred from the Chicago office. David Patterson, his name was. Married guy with 2 kids, she'd mentioned. Seemed nice enough. By month 4, things started to change. She'd be tired during our calls. She'd started going out more with coworkers. Just the girls, she'd say. You know how it is. We need to blow off steam after dealing with insurance claims all day. I didn't think much of it at first. Jennifer had always been social, and I wanted her to have friends while I was gone. But then the calls started getting shorter. The emails less frequent. When I'd ask about her day, she'd give me 1-sentence answers. When I'd ask about David Patterson and how the new supervision was working out, she'd get uncomfortable. He's fine, she'd say. Professional. Does his job. But her voice would change when she said it, higher pitched, the way it got when she was nervous. The photo in that anonymous email showed them holding hands as they walked into the Marriott downtown. Jennifer was wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. The timestamp showed it was taken on a Tuesday afternoon, during work hours. After I got that email, I'd started paying closer attention during our video calls. Jennifer's hair was different. She'd lost weight in her face but gained it in her chest. She was wearing makeup during calls she'd never worn makeup for before. Small things, but they added up. The private investigator I hired charged me $800 for 3 weeks of surveillance. He was thorough. Followed her to lunch meetings that lasted 3 hours. Documented hotel visits that happened twice a week. Got photos of her leaving David Patterson's apartment complex on Saturday mornings. The pregnancy test receipt from CVS Pharmacy was dated 4 weeks before I was scheduled to come home. Right around the time she'd started talking about missing me more than usual. The envelope was waiting for me in my truck when I went out to get my gear. The private investigator had left it under my windshield wiper, just like we'd arranged. Inside were photographs, bank records, medical records obtained through legal channels, and a timeline that laid out 4 months of deception. I sat in my driveway and went through it all. Jennifer entering the Marriott with David Patterson on 14 separate occasions. Jennifer leaving his apartment building on Saturday mornings while his wife was at yoga class with the kids. Jennifer at a downtown clinic for prenatal appointments she'd never mentioned to me. The medical records were the hardest part. Pregnancy confirmed at 12 weeks. Blood work showing she was healthy. Ultrasound images of a baby that had been conceived while I was sleeping in a tent in Iraq, eating meals from plastic packages and trying not to think about roadside bombs. David Patterson was 41 years old. He had a wife named Catherine and 2 daughters, ages 8 and 11. He lived in a house worth $400,000 in Johnson County. He drove a BMW and wore expensive suits and had never served a day in his life protecting anything more dangerous than insurance claims. I put the photos back in the envelope and looked at my house. Jennifer was probably inside right now planning how she was going to convince me that her pregnancy was a miracle timing, that somehow in the 2 weeks I'd been home on leave 6 months ago, we'd conceived a child she'd suddenly decided she wanted desperately. The thing that bothered me most wasn't even the cheating. It was how calculated it all was. She'd waited until I was deployed to start the affair. She'd waited until she was pregnant to end it. And now she was waiting for me to come home so she could trick me into raising another man's child. I'd spent 6 months in a combat zone, worrying about her, missing her, counting down the days until I could hold her again. While I was dodging rocket attacks and thinking about our future together, she was building a future with someone else. But Jennifer had made one mistake. She'd assumed I was the same trusting kid who'd married her 8 years ago. She'd assumed that 6 months in Iraq hadn't changed me. She'd assumed I wouldn't be smart enough to notice the holes in her story. I folded the envelope and put it in my jacket pocket. Then I went back inside to face my wife. She was in the kitchen making dinner. She'd changed clothes, put on something that showed off her figure. She was trying to seduce me into believing her lie. "How was your truck?" she asked without turning around. "Fine," I said, "just getting my things settled." She nodded and stirred whatever she was cooking. "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. I watched her for a moment, memorizing this scene. In 20 minutes, everything was going to change. "Jennifer," I said quietly. "Yes?" "We need to talk." Jennifer turned around slowly, the wooden spoon still in her hand. Her face had gone pale. "Talk about what?" she asked. I pulled out one of the kitchen chairs and sat down. "About your pregnancy." Her eyes widened. "How did you— I was going to tell you. I just found out myself." "When did you find out?" "Yesterday," she said quickly. "I took a test yesterday morning. I was going to surprise you with dinner and then tell you the news." I nodded like I believed her. "That's wonderful timing. How far along do you think you are?" "I don't know yet. Maybe a few weeks? From when you were home on leave?" "February," I said. "I was home for 2 weeks in February." "Right, February." She was gripping the spoon so tightly her knuckles were white. It must have happened then. I stood up and walked over to her. She flinched when I put my hands on her shoulders, but she didn't pull away. "Jennifer," I said gently, "I need you to be honest with me." "I am being honest. Are you sure? Because I've been thinking about the timeline and something doesn't add up. Her breathing got faster. What do you mean? Well, if you conceived in February, you'd be about 4.5 months along. But you look more like you're 3 months, maybe 3.5. I don't know what you're talking about. I just found out yesterday. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out one of the photographs. It showed her walking out of the women's health clinic downtown, dated 3 weeks ago. She was clearly showing in the photo wearing maternity clothes. Jennifer stared at the picture for a long time. When she looked up at me, there were tears in her eyes. Gabriel, I can explain. I'm sure you can. But first, let me show you something else. I pulled out another photo. This one showed her holding hands with David Patterson as they walked into the Marriott. Jennifer's mouth fell open. Where did you get these? Someone sent me an email while I was deployed, anonymous. Just a photo and a message that said my wife wasn't eating alone. Gabriel, please, it's not what you think. What is it then? She set the spoon down on the counter and wrapped her arms around herself. David and we became friends while you were gone. He was going through problems with his wife. I was lonely. We started having lunch together and it grew into something more. Something more. But it's over now. It's been over for weeks. When I found out I was pregnant, I ended it. I realized what I really wanted was a family with you. I pulled out the medical records. According to this, you're 14 weeks pregnant. That puts conception sometime in late May. I left for Iraq in April. Jennifer stared at the papers in my hands. Her face went from pale to gray. I hired a private investigator, I said. He's very thorough. Gabriel, please, I know how this looks, but how it looks is that you've been having an affair with your married supervisor for 4 months while I was serving my country. How it looks is that you got pregnant with his baby, and now you're trying to trick me into thinking it's mine. She started crying then, real tears, not the manipulative ones from earlier. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. And instead of being honest with me, you decided to lie. Because I love you. Because I want this to work. You love me, but you've been sleeping with another man for 4 months. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake, but the baby isn't mine. She flinched like I'd slapped her. You don't know that. I pulled out the timeline the investigator had prepared. Hotel receipts, apartment building security footage, credit card records showing meals for 2 at romantic restaurants. Actually, I do know that. Because you've been with David Patterson at least twice a week since I deployed. Because the conception date lines up perfectly with when you started staying out late on weeknights. Because you've been lying to me for months. Jennifer sank into a chair and put her head in her hands. What are you going to do? That depends on you. Jennifer looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. What do you mean? I mean, you have a choice to make. You can keep lying to me, or you can tell me the truth about everything. I told you the truth. I had an affair. I'm pregnant. I ended it because I realized I made a mistake. When did you end it? 3 weeks ago. I pulled out another photograph. This one was taken 2 days ago while I was still in Iraq. It showed Jennifer and David Patterson leaving his apartment building together. She was wearing the same maternity top she'd worn to greet me at the door. Try again, I said. Her shoulders sagged. Okay. I didn't end it 3 weeks ago. When did you end it? Yesterday, when I found out you were coming home. So, you've been with him this entire time? Yes. And the baby is his. She nodded without looking at me. Yes. Does he know? Yes. What does he plan to do about it? Jennifer started crying again. Nothing. He said he can't leave his wife and kids. He said I was on my own. I sat down across from her. So your plan was to come home, seduce me, and trick me into thinking the baby was mine. I didn't know what else to do. I'm 3 months pregnant with nowhere to go. David made it clear he wasn't going to help me. I panicked. How long have you been planning this? Since I found out I was pregnant. But Gabriel, I swear, part of me really does want this to work. Part of me really does love you. Which part? What? Which part of you loves me? The part that's been lying to me for 4 months? The part that's been sleeping with another man while I was getting shot at in Iraq? The part that was planning to trick me into raising his child? She didn't answer. I pulled out the bank records. Your credit card shows charges at Victoria's Secret, expensive restaurants, hotels. You've been spending money we don't have on your affair. I'll pay it back. With what? Your salary? You've been taking half days off work to meet David. According to the investigator, your supervisor at Caldwell Insurance has been asking questions about your attendance. Jennifer's face went white. How does he know that? He's thorough. He talked to your coworkers. Apparently, you and David haven't been as discreet as you thought. Everyone in your office knows about the affair. That's not true. Susan Phillips in accounting told him she'd seen you leaving hotels together. Janet Morrison in claims processing said you'd been acting strange for months. Even the security guard in your building noticed you were staying late with David after everyone else went home. Jennifer put her hands over her face. Oh God. It gets worse. David's wife knows too. Her head snapped up. What? Catherine Patterson. She's known for 2 months. She hired her own private investigator. You're lying. I pulled out a letter from my jacket pocket. She wrote you this. She asked my investigator to give it to you when the time was right. Jennifer took the letter with shaking hands. As she read it, her face went from white to green. When she finished, she dropped the letter on the table. She's filing for divorce, Jennifer whispered. And she's naming you as the other woman. She's going after David for everything he's worth. His house, his retirement, his savings. She's also going to make sure your affair becomes public record in the divorce proceedings. This can't be happening. It is happening, and it's about to get worse. What do you mean? I pulled out the final document from the envelope. I've already filed for divorce. Jennifer stared at the divorce papers like they were written in a foreign language. When? 2 weeks ago, from Iraq. My lawyer filed them while I was still deployed. You can't do this. I already did. And according to Missouri law, adultery affects property division. Since you've been using marital funds to support your affair, and since you've been lying about paternity, I'm entitled to most of our assets. She looked around the kitchen like she was seeing it for the first time. This is my home too. Actually, it's not. The house is in my name only. I bought it before we got married and we never added you to the deed. You have no legal claim to it. The furniture, my clothes, you can take your personal belongings. Everything else stays. Jennifer stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. This isn't fair. You can't just throw me out. I'm not throwing you out. You threw yourself out when you decided to have an affair while I was serving my country. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. She started pacing around the kitchen. David will help me. Once he sees these papers, once he realizes his wife is leaving him anyway, he'll want to be with me. David Patterson resigned from Caldwell Insurance this morning. She stopped pacing. What? He cleaned out his office at 6 a.m. before anyone else got to work. Left a resignation letter on his supervisor's desk. According to my investigator, he's moving back to Chicago to stay with his brother. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and showed her a text message from the investigator. It was timestamped 3 hours ago and included a photo of David loading boxes into a moving truck. He's gone, Jennifer. He left without telling you. She grabbed my phone and stared at the photo. He wouldn't just leave. He already did. His apartment is empty. His cell phone has been disconnected. He's not coming back. Jennifer sank back into her chair. I don't understand. He said he loved me. He lied. But the baby is not his problem anymore. He made that clear when he ran away instead of facing the consequences. She was quiet for a long time. When she finally looked at me, there was something desperate in her eyes. Gabriel, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. I'll go to counseling, I'll do whatever you want, just don't leave me with nothing. You didn't leave me with nothing when you decided to cheat on me. I was lonely. You were gone for 6 months. I was gone serving my country. While I was risking my life, you were risking our marriage. It meant nothing. It meant everything. It meant our marriage vows meant nothing to you. It meant my service meant nothing to you. It meant I meant nothing to you. She started crying again. That's not true. Then why did you do it? I don't know. I was scared and lonely, and David was there, and he made me feel special. And now? Now I realize I made the biggest mistake of my life. I stood up and walked over to the stove. The dinner she'd been making was burning. I turned off the heat and moved the pan. The divorce will be final in 60 days, I said. You have until tomorrow to pack your things and find somewhere to stay. Gabriel, please. The locks will be changed tomorrow evening. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. One more thing, I'm keeping the photos and the medical records. If you try to claim the baby is mine for any legal purposes, I'll produce them in court. She didn't say anything, she just sat there crying. I went upstairs to pack a bag. I'd stay at a hotel tonight, let her have one last night in the house to figure out her next move. It was more kindness than she deserved, but I'd always been too decent for my own good. That was about to change. 2 months later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office when Jennifer's attorney called. She wanted to contest the divorce terms. She was claiming the baby might be mine after all, demanding a paternity test, asking for spousal support and part of my military benefits. Tell her no, I said. She's prepared to take this to court, my lawyer warned. Good. Let's go to court. The hearing was set for the following Tuesday. Jennifer showed up 5 months pregnant, wearing a conservative dress and looking like the picture of an abandoned military wife. Her lawyer had coached her well, but I'd been preparing for this moment since the day I'd discovered her affair. When the judge asked for evidence regarding paternity, I presented the complete investigative file. The photographs, the medical records, the timeline showing conception occurred while I was deployed. Jennifer's face went white as her lawyer reviewed the documents. Your Honor, her attorney said, my client admits to having an affair, but the timing could still. The timing is very clear, my lawyer interrupted. The defendant conceived this child while Sergeant Rodriguez was serving in Iraq. Furthermore, we have evidence that she attempted to deceive him about paternity upon his return. The judge reviewed the medical records. Mr. Rodriguez, you were deployed from April through October? Yes, Your Honor. And according to these medical records, conception occurred in late May? Yes, Your Honor. The judge looked at Jennifer. Miss Rodriguez, do you dispute these dates? Jennifer's lawyer whispered something to her. She shook her head. The court finds no biological relationship between Sergeant Rodriguez and the child in question, the judge announced. The divorce will be granted as filed with no spousal support or shared custody arrangements. Jennifer started crying. Her lawyer gathered his papers and stood up. Your Honor, he said, my client will need time to arrange alternative housing. The defendant has had 60 days to arrange alternative housing, the judge replied. This matter is closed. As we walked out of the courtroom, Jennifer grabbed my arm. Gabriel, please, I have nowhere to go. I gently removed her hand. You should have thought about that before you decided to throw away 8 years of marriage for a man who ran away the moment things got complicated. She stood there in the hallway, 5 months pregnant and completely alone. Part of me felt sorry for her, but mostly I felt relieved. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I heard through mutual friends that Jennifer had moved back in with her parents in rural Nebraska. Her father was a farmer who'd never approved of her city life anyway. She was working at a small-town insurance office for half the salary she'd made in Kansas City, trying to save money for when the baby arrived. David Patterson's divorce had been even messier than ours. His wife had taken him for everything he was worth. He'd lost his house, his savings, and his right to see his daughters unsupervised. The last I heard, he was working at a small insurance agency in Chicago, living in a studio apartment and sending most of his paycheck to his ex-wife. Jennifer had tried to contact him after the baby was born, but he'd refused to acknowledge paternity or provide any support. She was raising the child alone in her childhood bedroom, in a town where everyone knew exactly why she'd come home. As for me, I'd used my military benefits to go back to school. I was studying criminal justice, thinking about a career in law enforcement when my service was up. I'd bought a smaller house outside Kansas City, something that was completely mine. I was dating a woman named Sophia who worked as a nurse at the VA hospital. She understood military life, understood sacrifice, understood loyalty. Sometimes I thought about those 8 years with Jennifer, the good times, the dreams we'd shared, the future we'd planned together. But mostly I was grateful that her betrayal had shown me who she really was before I'd wasted any more of my life with someone who saw my deployment as an opportunity instead of a sacrifice. I'd learned the difference between people who support those who serve and people who exploit their absence, and that lesson was worth more than the marriage I'd lost. In the months that followed, Jennifer faced the full consequences of her deception. She lost her well-paying job in Kansas City when word of her affair with a supervisor spread throughout the company, forcing her to return to her parents' farm in the middle of Nebraska, where job opportunities were scarce, and everyone knew her story. David Patterson abandoned her completely when his own marriage collapsed, leaving her to raise his child alone while he fled to Chicago to rebuild his shattered life. The small farming community where she grew up offered little sympathy for a woman who had betrayed a deployed Marine, making her both financially dependent on her aging parents and socially isolated in a place where military service was deeply respected and adultery was not easily forgiven. My military training had taught me patience and strategic thinking, skills that served me well in protecting myself from someone who had mistaken my absence for opportunity rather than sacrifice. Here's my starter husband. Time for the real thing. Veronica's voice cut through the cocktail chatter at her law firm opening like a blade. I stood there in my best suit, holding a glass of champagne I'd bought, watching her address a room full of attorneys who'd come to celebrate her new practice in downtown Charlotte. My name is Lucas. I'm 39, and I've been married to Veronica for 8 years. I work in financial consulting, the kind of steady job that pays bills and builds credit. Nothing glamorous, nothing that gets you invited to cocktail parties. But I was the one who made this party possible. Veronica gestured toward me with her champagne flute, and the room turned to look. 20-something lawyers in expensive suits, older partners with their practice smiles, law school classmates who'd made it to the big firms, all of them staring at me like I was some kind of exhibit. Lucas has been such a good sport about supporting my career, she continued, her voice carrying that tone she used when she wanted to sound gracious but cutting. Co-signing loans, guaranteeing credit lines, making sure I could focus on what really mattered. But now that I'm established, well, she pulled an envelope from her purse with theatrical flair. These are divorce papers. I think it's time I upgraded to someone more compatible with my new position. The room went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then someone started laughing, then someone else. Soon half the room was chuckling like this was the funniest thing they'd heard all week. A few people actually applauded. I looked at the envelope in her manicured hand. Divorce papers, at her law firm opening, in front of her colleagues. She'd planned this, choreographed it, made me part of her show. "Don't look so shocked, Lucas," she said, pressing the envelope into my hands. "You had to know this was coming. I mean, look around." She gestured at the sleek office space, the expensive furniture, the well-dressed crowd. "This is my world now. You were just transitional." Someone behind me whispered, "Brutal, but smart. No point dragging it out." Another voice, "She's got guts, I respect that." I stood there for a moment, feeling their eyes on me, feeling the weight of their judgment. 8 years of marriage reduced to entertainment at a cocktail party. I folded the envelope and put it in my jacket pocket. Didn't say a word, just walked to the door. "Lucas, don't be dramatic," Veronica called after me. "We can discuss the details later. Stay and have a drink." I kept walking, but something cold and calculating was already forming in my mind. something that told me Veronica might not understand exactly what she'd just thrown away. The drive home gave me time to think about how we'd gotten here. 8 years ago, Veronica was a paralegal with big dreams and bigger debts. She was smart, ambitious, and completely broke. Law school cost money she didn't have, and her credit was already stretched thin from undergraduate loans. That's where I came in. My consulting business was doing well, and my credit score was pristine. 842 to be exact. When Veronica got accepted to law school, she couldn't qualify for the full amount she needed. The banks wanted a co-signer with solid income and clean credit history. Just temporarily, she'd said, sitting at my kitchen table with loan applications spread out like battle plans. Once I graduate and get established, I'll refinance everything in my name. You'll be free and clear. I'd believed her. More than that, I'd wanted to help her succeed. So I signed for $68,000 in law school loans. Then another $15,000 for bar exam prep. Then $37,000 more when she decided she needed a Master of Laws degree to specialize in corporate litigation. But the requests didn't stop after graduation. I need to look the part, she'd explained when she asked me to co-sign a credit line for her professional wardrobe. $25,000 for suits, shoes, and accessories that would help her fit in at networking events. Then came the technology package for her new practice: legal research subscriptions, case management software, high-end computers and servers. Another $40,000 in business credit that required my personal guarantee. The professional liability insurance needed a backer too. The office lease required someone with established credit to guarantee the rent. The legal databases, the bar association dues, the conference fees, the continuing education courses. Everything required Lucas to sign on the dotted line. I'd kept careful records, of course. Spreadsheets tracking every dollar, every guarantee, every promise to handle this myself once things stabilize. The total came to $223,000 in loans, credit lines, and personal guarantees, all backed by my credit, my income, my reputation with the banks. And through it all, Veronica had grown more distant, more critical. She'd started introducing me as my husband instead of using my name. Then just, "This is Lucas," with no explanation of who I was or why I mattered. Tonight was just the final step in a process that had been building for months. The warning signs had been there. Late nights at the office with colleagues I'd never met. Weekend trips to legal conferences where spouses weren't invited. Conversations that stopped when I entered the room. But I'd kept signing papers, kept guaranteeing loans, kept believing that supporting her dreams would somehow strengthen our marriage. Tonight proved how wrong I'd been. I sat in my truck outside our house for an hour before going inside. Not because I was devastated, because I was thinking. Veronica had made a mistake tonight. A big one. She'd assumed that my support was somehow separate from my worth. That she could take everything I'd provided, build her career on the foundation of my credit and my guarantees, then discard me like I was some kind of stepping stone. But here's what she didn't understand about finance. When you remove the foundation, everything built on top of it comes down. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First, I called my attorney, not a divorce lawyer, though I'd need one of those soon enough. I called James Wright, who handled my business contracts and knew exactly what kind of financial exposure I was carrying for Veronica's career. "Lucas, it's almost 11 p.m. Is everything okay? I need you to review every document I've signed for Veronica's practice. Every guarantee, every co-signature, every personal backing arrangement. I want to know my options for withdrawal." What happened? She served me divorce papers at her law firm opening, in front of her colleagues, made it into entertainment. James was quiet for a moment. Jesus. "Okay, I can be in my office by 7 a.m. Bring everything." Next, I called my accountant, then my banker. By midnight, I had a clear picture of exactly how much power I held over Veronica's professional life. She'd built everything on credit I'd provided. The business loan for her office space required my personal guarantee, meaning the bank could come after me if she defaulted. The equipment financing for her computers and legal software was in my name. Her professional liability insurance listed me as the policy guarantor. Even her legal research subscriptions were tied to a business credit card that required my approval for charges over $5,000. The beautiful irony was that Veronica, for all her legal expertise, had never bothered to read the fine print on our agreements. Most of them included clauses allowing me to withdraw my guarantee with 30 days' notice. Some could be terminated immediately if the primary borrower's circumstances changed significantly. A divorce certainly qualified as a significant change in circumstances. I made a pot of coffee and started writing letters. Withdrawal of guarantee notices. Termination of co-signer agreements. Cancellation of credit line backings. Each one professionally worded, legally sound, and devastating to Veronica's ability to operate her practice. By sunrise, I had 17 letters ready to mail. Certified delivery, return receipt requested. I also had a plan. Veronica thought she'd humiliated me in front of her colleagues. But humiliation was temporary. Financial collapse was permanent. She was about to learn the difference between having a career and having the credit to maintain one. I showered, put on my best suit, and headed to the post office, then to my attorney's office, then to the bank. Veronica had started this with divorce papers at a cocktail party. I was going to finish it with compound interest. The letters went out on Monday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, my phone was ringing. "Lucas, we need to talk." Veronica's voice was tight, controlled, professional. "I got some concerning notices in the mail." "Did you? That's unfortunate. Don't play games with me. These withdrawal notices could seriously impact my practice. We need to discuss this like adults." I was sitting in my office, looking out at the Charlotte skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. 39 floors up, where my consulting firm had rented space for the past 5 years. The same office where I'd reviewed Veronica's loan applications and signed my name to her dreams. "I thought we were done discussing things," I said. "Wasn't that the point of Saturday night?" "That was poorly handled, I admit that. But you can't destroy my business because your feelings got hurt." "Your feelings got hurt. Like I was a child throwing a tantrum instead of a man who'd underwritten her entire career." "I'm not destroying anything, Veronica. I'm just withdrawing my financial support from someone who publicly stated she no longer wants my involvement in her life." "This is different. This is business." "No, this was always business. You just convinced me it was something else." She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her lawyer voice was in full effect. Measured, precise, threatening. "If you proceed with these withdrawals, you'll be in breach of our marital agreement to support each other's careers. I can take you to court for intentional interference with my business relationships." I almost laughed. "Veronica, you served me divorce papers at a cocktail party. I think our marital agreement is already null and void. The financial commitments are separate from the marriage. You can't just— Actually, I can. James Wright reviewed every document we signed. Turns out most of them have clauses allowing withdrawal in case of changed circumstances. Divorce is definitely a changed circumstance." "James Wright? You went to my colleague's husband?" That stopped me cold. "What did you say?" "James Wright. His wife Patricia is in my practice group. They've been married 12 years. The pieces clicked into place. Patricia Wright, the blonde woman who'd been standing next to Veronica when she served me the divorce papers. The one who'd laughed the loudest when Veronica called me her starter husband. "You knew," I said slowly. "You knew I'd probably call James for legal advice. You knew his wife would tell him exactly what happened at your party. I knew you'd need legal counsel for the divorce. James is competent." But that wasn't what this was about. This was about control. Veronica had orchestrated Saturday night knowing that my own attorney was married to someone in her professional circle. She'd figured I'd be too embarrassed to pursue aggressive action against her if it meant exposing my humiliation to the legal community. She'd miscalculated. "Veronica, let me ask you something. In all your legal training, did you ever study the concept of mutually assured destruction?" "What?" "It's when both parties have the power to destroy each other so neither one acts. It only works when both parties care equally about the outcome." "I don't understand what you're getting at." "You think I won't follow through with these withdrawals because it might embarrass me in front of your colleagues. You think I care what Patricia Wright tells James about our marriage? I looked out at the skyline again, at the city where I'd built my business and my reputation without needing anyone's approval or support. But here's the thing, Veronica. You need my credit to survive. I don't need your colleagues' approval to succeed. You've got a lot more to lose than I do. Lucas, be reasonable. We can work this out. I am being reasonable. I'm treating this like the business transaction you've made it into. The line went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, less certain. What do you want? I want you to understand what you threw away on Saturday night. I want you to realize that your starter husband was holding up your entire professional life. And then what? Then you can figure out how to practice law without me. By Thursday morning, the first responses started arriving. The business loan company acknowledged my withdrawal of guarantee and informed Veronica that she'd need to provide alternative collateral or pay down the balance to an amount she could personally secure. $67,000, due within 30 days. The equipment financing company was next. Without my guarantee, Veronica would need to either pay off the remaining $42,000 immediately or return the computers, servers, and legal software that formed the technological backbone of her practice. But the real blow came Friday afternoon. Her professional liability insurance was canceled effective immediately. No insurance meant no practice. It was that simple. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant buzzed my office. Mr. Foster, there's a Veronica Foster here to see you. She says it's urgent. Send her in. Veronica walked into my office looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a hasty ponytail, and she was wearing jeans instead of one of her designer suits. She'd been crying. Lucas, please, we need to talk. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair where she used to sit when she needed me to sign papers for her latest career advancement. I'm listening. My insurance is gone. The bank wants $67,000 by next Friday, or they're calling the loan. The equipment company is threatening to repossess everything. That's unfortunate. Don't do this. Don't be cruel. I leaned back in my chair and looked at her. Really looked at her. 8 years of marriage, and I was seeing her clearly for the first time. Veronica, do you remember what you said to me when you first asked me to co-sign your law school loans? That was 8 years ago. You said, I just need someone to believe in me until I can believe in myself. You said you needed a partner who understood that investing in your future was investing in our future together. She nodded, tears starting to form. So I believed in you. I co-signed for $120,000 in education loans. I guaranteed another $40,000 in business credit. I backed your equipment financing, your insurance, your office lease, $223,000 of my credit supporting your dreams. I know, I'm grateful. Are you? Because on Saturday night you told a room full of lawyers that I was transitional, that I was your starter husband who'd served his purpose and could now be discarded. I didn't mean it like that. You did, though. You meant exactly like that. You thought you could take everything I'd given you and walk away clean. You thought your legal degree made you independent of the man who financed it. I pulled out a folder from my desk drawer. My copies of every loan document, every guarantee, every piece of paper that connected my financial life to hers. But here's what you missed in all your legal training, Veronica. When you build something on borrowed foundation, you better make sure the foundation wants to stay in place. She stared at the folder. What do you want me to do? I want you to go back to your colleagues and explain how your starter husband was actually your primary financial partner. I want you to tell them that your successful practice was built on credit you couldn't qualify for on your own. I can't do that. It would destroy my reputation. Your reputation is already destroyed. Your practice is failing. Your insurance is canceled, and your colleagues are about to find out that you can't manage your own finances. The only question now is whether you learn something from this. She sat there silently for a long moment. How did I get this so wrong? She whispered. You started believing your own story, I said. You forgot that success built on someone else's foundation isn't really yours. Saturday morning, I got the call I'd been expecting. Lucas, this is Patricia Wright. I think we need to discuss the situation with Veronica. Patricia, The woman who'd laughed when Veronica served me divorce papers. The wife of my attorney, calling to clean up the mess her colleague had created. What situation is that, Patricia? Don't be obtuse. Veronica's practice is in crisis because you withdrew your financial backing. This affects more than just her. That was interesting. How does it affect you? We had cases we were going to refer to her. Clients who need her expertise. If her practice fails, it impacts our entire network. Now I understood. Veronica hadn't just built her practice on my credit. She'd built it on promised referrals from other attorneys who expected her to be a reliable partner. My withdrawal wasn't just destroying her business. It was embarrassing the people who'd vouched for her. Patricia, I'm curious about something. When Veronica served me divorce papers at her opening, did she mention that her practice was entirely dependent on my financial backing? Silence. Because I'm thinking she probably portrayed herself as an independent success story. Self-made lawyer building her own firm through talent and hard work. Her qualifications speak for themselves, do they? Because from where I sit, her qualifications include 8 years of using my credit to fund her career while planning to discard me once she didn't need my signature anymore. You're being vindictive. I'm being practical. Veronica made it clear that she considers our partnership over. I'm simply agreeing with her assessment. What will it take to resolve this? And there it was. The real reason for the call. Veronica's colleagues were pressuring her to fix the situation because her failure was reflecting poorly on their judgment. It's simple, Patricia. Veronica needs to acknowledge publicly that her practice was built on financial support she's no longer entitled to. She needs to explain to her colleagues that her starter husband was actually her business partner. She'll never agree to that. Then her practice will fail, and everyone who referred clients to her will look like they failed to properly vet her financial stability. I could hear Patricia breathing on the other end of the line. You realize this will hurt innocent clients too, she said finally. Veronica should have thought about that before she decided to humiliate the person funding her operation. So there's nothing we can discuss? No compromise? I looked out my office window at the city below. Somewhere out there, Veronica was probably in her office, staring at stack of bills she couldn't pay and legal databases she couldn't access. There is one option, I said. What? Veronica can buy out my guarantees, all $223,000. Pay off every loan, every credit line, every obligation that has my name on it. Once she's truly independent, she can practice however she wants. She doesn't have that kind of money. Then she's not really independent, is she? Patricia was quiet for a long moment. This is about more than money, isn't it? Yes, it's about respect. It's about understanding that partnership means partnership, not exploitation. It's about the difference between earning something and being given something. And if she can't pay, then she'll have to rebuild her career the same way she built it the first time, by finding someone willing to believe in her potential and support her dreams. I paused, letting that sink in. Of course, this time everyone will know exactly what kind of partner she turned out to be. The line went dead. By Monday morning, I expected Veronica would finally understand the full scope of what she'd thrown away. Monday morning brought 97 missed calls. I was having coffee when my phone started buzzing at 6 a.m. Veronica. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. By the time I finished my shower, there were 15 missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. Lucas, please call me back. Everything is falling apart. My malpractice insurance is canceled. Legal research access cut off. Clients are calling. Please. I drove to my office through Charlotte's morning traffic, my phone buzzing constantly in the passenger seat. By the time I parked, the missed call count had reached 43. At 9 a.m., she showed up at my office. Lucas, you have to help me. Veronica burst through my door looking desperate. Her professional composure was gone, replaced by raw panic. My research databases are locked out. I can't access case law. I have a brief due tomorrow and no way to prepare it. I looked up from my computer. That sounds like a problem. This isn't funny. I have clients depending on me. You should have thought about that before you decided you didn't need me anymore. I made a mistake, okay? I handled Saturday night wrong, but you can't destroy my entire career because I hurt your feelings. I stood up and walked to my window, looking out at the city where I'd built my reputation without anyone's help. Veronica, do you know what the definition of a starter husband is? Don't. It's someone who supports you until you're ready for something better, someone whose value is entirely in what they provide, not who they are. I turned to face her. You were right. I was your starter husband. I was the foundation you built on until you were ready to move up. But here's what you missed. What? When you remove the foundation, everything built on top of it collapses. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it and her face went white. That's probably the Bar Association, I said. They're very concerned about lawyers who can't maintain their professional obligations. You called the Bar Association? I didn't have to. When your malpractice insurance was canceled, they were notified automatically. Practicing law without insurance is a serious violation. She stared at me, finally understanding. Your starter husband wasn't just paying for your lifestyle, Veronica. He was the entire foundation of your professional existence. 3 months later, I read in the legal newsletter that Veronica Foster had closed her practice and taken a job as an associate at a small firm in Gastonia. Her starting salary was $48,000, less than half what she'd been making monthly payments on. Patricia Wright called me once more, asking if I'd consider reversing my decision for the good of the legal community. I told her the legal community should focus on vetting the financial stability of lawyers before referring clients to them. The divorce was finalized without contest. Veronica couldn't afford to fight it. I kept the house, the one where I'd signed all those papers supporting her dreams. I turned her home office into a library. Sometimes I sit there in the evenings, reading books on business strategy and thinking about the difference between partnership and exploitation. My consulting firm landed 3 new clients in the months after Veronica's practice failed. Apparently, being known as someone who doesn't tolerate being taken advantage of is good for business. People respect clear boundaries. James Wright stopped representing me, citing his wife's professional relationship with Veronica. I found a better attorney anyway. Last week I got a letter from Veronica. She wanted to apologize, she said, to explain that she'd gotten caught up in trying to impress her colleagues and lost sight of what really mattered. She hoped we could be friends someday. I threw the letter away without finishing it. Some bridges, once burned, aren't worth rebuilding. Some foundations, once removed, reveal exactly what they were supporting. I drive past her old office building sometimes. There's a yoga studio there now, better use of the space. Sometimes the most important lesson you can teach someone is what they had before they threw it away.